there are around 44 central labor legislations in India, central labor legislations. So when it comes to central labor legislations, uh, I would like to clarify on this particular part that labor is a subject matter of the concurrent list, wherein states and center, both of them, they could legislate on these issues, right? So when it comes to the central labor legislations, they come from the central government. So most of them, they are related to industrial relations, factories, safety, social security, compensation in case of accidents, tea plantations, mines, building and construction workers, and details of these can be accessed through this link. I hope to leave this PPT with you, and after you click this link, you will get to know that what all central labor legislations are there when it comes to the labor law. So 29 out of 44 legislations, they were consolidated as an integration move. So all 29 legislations which have been consolidated as 4 labor codes, they are set to repeal. Before I start with the integration part, one thing is to be noted that labor codes are not yet in force. Government is planning to notify all of them with effect from 1st of April 2025, and again tripartite consultations with the trade unions and with the employers. FICCI, Bharatiya Mazdoor Sangh, All India Trade Unions Congress, separately they have been conducted by the government, and last meeting was on 28th of July, and out of that they are planning to have much more public opinion when it comes to bringing labor codes into force. So 29 out of 44 legislations have been consolidated, and this is the list of legislations which has not been consolidated. So these legislations, they will continue to be in force. We can mention them as the Indian Railways Act, the Dock Workers Act, the Merchant Shipping, this Statistics Act, the Immigration Act, this Welfare Fund Act, and sorry, this Iron Ore Mines, Manganese and Chrome Ore Mines Labor Welfare Act, Mica Mines Labor Welfare Fund Act. So all these legislations, they will continue to be in the force. So only 29 legislations have been consolidated for the purpose of labor codes. Now, so labor codes, they were conceived in 2019. However, they were passed by both of the houses and they received the presidential assent in 2020. So, first was the Code on Wages, which was published in the Gazette of Government of India on August 8. And rest of the 3 codes are the Industrial Relations Code, the Code on Social Security, the Occupational Safety, Health and Working Conditions Code. All were published on 29 September 2021. However, they all were framed in 2020. Now, let us start with the first code and the most important one, which is set to bring the pivotal changes in the legal landscape of law of employment when it comes to the blue collar thing, that is Code on Wages. So, this is to be noted that this code on wages is equally applicable in the organized and unorganized sectors. When I say unorganized sector, as I have already mentioned, the definition of the term unorganized worker has been given in the Unorganized Worker Social Security Act of 2008. And to be very specific, one thing which distinguishes the organized sector from the unorganized sector is that right to make association and unionization, the application of certain laws, the right to have a collective bargaining. There are many other points, but most important one, because the other side of the employment circle is missing here in unorganized sector. So that particular set of individuals, they may be earning more than the organized sector, as in the case of gig workers and platform workers, they may be earning more, but when it comes to unionization, when it comes to application of certain laws, they are exempted. So what is the objective and rationale behind the code on wages? So it is aimed to regulate wage and bonus payments, equal pay to equal work, but the catch here is performing similar work in industry, trade, business, or manufacturing. So these points, they're very important for us to note. Industry, trade, business, or manufacturing. Labor law specifically mentions different definitions for industry, trade, business, or manufacturing. However, it is to be noted that the individuals who are giving services in these sectors, they are entitled to have minimum wages plus bonus payments and equal pay for equal work as far as the code on wages is concerned. Ladies and gentlemen, there is nothing new in this. We have been providing equal pay for equal work right from 1976 and by Constitution of India from 1950. Bonus payments, they were already there from 1965. The law on minimum wages again is not a new legislation, but what is new in this case, I'll be sharing with you people. See, first is the timely payment of minimum wages to all. So this point, timely payment of minimum wages to all, it has been consolidated from Payment of Wages Act and the Minimum Wages Act, right? So the basic point when it comes to the labor welfare was that individuals were not getting the minimum wage and they were not getting it in the when stipulated time period. So therefore, this particular point came into force. This is very important. Non-discrimination on gender basis. See, many of us, we have so many fads when it comes to non-discrimination on gender basis. Uh, the individuals who are sitting in the chambers, AC chambers, they don't think that there is a requirement of this, that non-discrimination on gender basis. But let me clarify, this is the legislation which has most of the litigation and most lok adalats, they are sorting out these types of issues, that discrimination on the basis of gender or biasness on the basis of gender. So very specifically, there is one liner legal solution to this. Your qualification does not matter when it comes to the discrimination. If I have done my PhD and other person is has also earned a PhD, it doesn't make a difference. There can still be discrimination. You cannot compel your employer to give you the same cadre. So this law comes with a catch. This law is only applicable when you are employed, when you are giving the services of the similar nature or the same services, right? There are individuals who are better qualified, but they are not given the cadre. So that is one of the basis of the discrimination. So it this law doesn't guarantee you the same cadre on the same qualifications. So even if you are admitted as with a particular qualification, what makes you entitled for having invoked this law is the cadre in which you are admitted. Say for example, I was admitted as an assistant professor, so all the assistant professors will get the same pay. It is not going to make a difference if I have earned more degrees than them or I have done better research than them. It will not make a difference. Similarly, in many cases, there are some super specialist doctors who are working as the medical officers. So the educational qualification will not make a difference. So this part has to be understood in this manner. Yes, what has to be proved beyond reasonable doubt, as it was held in Andrew de Costa versus McKinnon McKenzie, that if you are able to prove that you are doing the work of similar nature, so this is a Supreme Court case in which the court has held that uh, even if the nomenclature is different or the nomenclature is same, but if you are made to do some work which is similar to the other person and he is getting X salary and you are getting X minus 1 or X minus Z salary and salary. So it means you have all the right to contest that. So what is to be proved here is work of similar nature. Next point for discussion in the code on wages is the prohibition of illegal deductions. This is again, there are hardly any changes when it comes to prohibition of illegal deductions. So when we say illegal deductions, there are again a whole set of illegal deductions which have been provided in the codes. Deduction from the absence from duty. So if you are availing a leave, then it will not be considered as an absence from duty. Therefore these deductions, they are prohibited. Say for example, if you have misappropriated the property, if you have charged the wrong bills, if you have encashed the wrong checks, or if you have not exercised the due diligence when it comes to the exercise of your duty, then these deductions are permissible. Otherwise, other deductions which may sound illegal. Say, for example, the deduction on the basis of your absence when you were on a medical leave or certain other circumstances which are beyond your reasonable control. So that kind of deductions, they are considered as illegal deductions. Next is the review of minimum wages is 5 years. This is what the government of India has been doing since long. The wage review is conducted every 5 years, and state wage board, as we must be aware, they are duty bound to revise the wages in 5 years. So this is something which is in place and which is followed by government of India. One thing you could see in italics, that is inspector cum facilitator. So there is a very famous quote in from this Ministry of Employment that हमने inspector Raj खत्म कर दिया है. We are done away with this inspector Raj. So what they have done, they have changed the nomenclature of inspector to facilitator. So they are using the term inspector cum facilitator. So this is the additional duty which has been provided in the code, and it has been bestowed upon the inspector to facilitate the provision. So duty has been imposed on the inspector to facilitate the following of this particular code to the employer also and to the employee also. So this facilitator duties, they have been additionally been imposed on the inspector, but more or less they are same. Just one additional point that they have mentioned, that he is going to convey them the modalities, he is going to give them the tech assistance, he is going to make them understand the rules in a better manner. So these are the additional duties which have been imposed. So this is one of the endeavor to end this bureaucracy thing and Inspector Raj, as it has been claimed in many documents by Ministry of Labor and Employment. Now, this thing is very, very important for all of us to understand. So you will find two tier of definition in the code: employee and worker. See, there is very thin line of difference when we say employee and worker, and this definition has been followed in other code, but with the difference in the this amount which is drawn per mensum by an individual. So most of the rights, they are available to workers, and some of the rights in the codes, they are available to employees. So when we say what is the difference between work and employee, see, an employee is not a working journalist and a sales promotion employee, a contract labor or a migrant labor. So most important part of difference here is that he's always employed on wages, and he can be employed to do skilled, semi-skilled, unskilled, manual, operational, technical, supervisory work. One thing which is to be noted here is that there is no upper limit of any amount which is imposed on the employee. As far as worker is concerned, if he is earning in the supervisory capacity rupees 15,000, then he will not be considered as a worker. Then he will shift to the next bracket, which is of employee. Administrative and managerial work, they are excluded from the purview of the worker. And if the person is appointed in a supervisory capacity and earning an amount which is exceeding 5,000, 15,000 rupees, then he will not be a worker. Not to mention that apprentice and armed forces of the union, they are expressly excluded from the term of employee or worker in all the codes. So this thing is not even when an individual is getting covered under the Apprentice Act of 1961, when he is admitted as a trainee, he cannot have the benefit of these codes. Now, what are the modifications which have been carried out? So, definition of employer has been amended to suitably include all the contractors. So, employer, if you are hired for particular work, again this code will be applicable to you. Contract of services or contract for service, all of them, they have been included, and employer is made responsible. In kind payments, they were actually never out of the purview, but now there is an upper limit of 15% of the total wages. So in kind payments, they are subject to a 15% of the total wages. So your minimum wage, they may have 15% of the in kind wage as well. So this is important, that overtime compensation or overtime wage, which is double the regular wage, is covered to all the employees. This is a welcome decision. Earlier, it was only available to the workers, and that too subject to the medical fitness. subject to the skill, but now they have included payment of double the regular wage rate. Rate of regular wage, it is applicable on all the employees, right? But for the purpose of overtime, a written authorization is must uh, from the employee to do the overtime. Now, let us have some main provisions with reference to code on wages. I have written a verbatim part from the code itself. As you can see on screen, the first point: no employer shall pay to any employee. So, having understood the difference between worker and employee, so this law guarantees the payment of minimum wages to the employees. And another important part which is to be noted here, that provision of floor wages to be fixed by the central government, which could be different from geographical areas. See, the concept of floor wage is something which can be compared to the ILO convention of the universal minimum wage. See, this is the most important and welcome step which has been taken by government of India with the introduction of floor wage. When we say floor wage, it says that despite of the fact and the constitutional provision wherein governments, state governments, they are authorized to fix and revise the minimum wages as applicable their own states, they can have a floor wage which is to be fixed by the central government. Below floor wage, any state government cannot fix the minimum wage. Below the rate of floor wage which is fixed by the central government, state governments, they are supposed to go beyond that floor wage, not less than the floor wage. Next important part with reference to code on wages is the work of similar nature. When we say work of similar nature, it is the decision of the authority under the code on wages that whether the work is of similar nature or not. So code ends its responsibility here, that the authorities, they will decide that whether the work is of similar nature, because this has come after a lot of social engineering. When Supreme Court in many cases, it has been, as I discussed earlier, that Supreme Court in many cases, it has been coming very heavily on this, is that we need to lift the wheel of the nomenclature and see the exact work which was being carried out by the individual when it comes to equal pay for equal work. That gender discrimination cannot be there, but what is to be seen here is that there should be better opportunities for this particular point to be taken up by the individuals who are suffering on this account. Also in this code, it has been reiterated that if somebody is dismissed as a worker, he can also raise an industrial dispute in this particular case, code. Uh, as I have already mentioned, that role of inspector is mellowed down to facilitator. Various duties, they are same, responsibilities they are same, but he has to act as a facilitator, and he can be approached by the factories or these establishments or industries or manufacturing units to have their laws in force. Next important part is contracting out. This has to be kept in mind while preparing a contract of employment, that no particular individual can be made to sign a contract which rules out the payment of minimum wages or rules out the payment, rules out any particular provision of this particular act. So your contract of employment may mention anything, but despite of the fact that you have this equal, and you do not have this equal pay for equal work, then you can always contest that. So contracting out is not permissible. You cannot contract out your rights which have been given to you in this particular code. There is another landmark change in this code, in code on wages, that is the court is not supposed to take the cognizance unless a complaint is coming from the appropriate government, an employee, a registered trade union, or inspector or a facilitator. So the power to take cognizance under code on wages is not there. So until and unless the complaint should come from the appropriate government, and when we say the term appropriate government, it is to be noted that appropriate government is the government which could be different in all the cases. When a particular unit is directly controlled by the central government and the 51% of the paid up capital is held by the central government, then we consider central government as the appropriate government. Otherwise, the state government can be the appropriate government. Also, I need to mention here that Manrega and Coal Mines Provident Fund and Miscellaneous Provisions Act, they remain unaffected when it comes to the application of these codes. Manrega and Coal Mines Provident Fund and Miscellaneous Provisions Act, they do not have any impact on this particular code. So Manrega may have different settlement for the payment of wages, and similar, if there is any difference in the Coal Mines Provident Fund and Miscellaneous Provisions Act, they are going to remain same. Now, the next part in this code on wages is the payment of bonus. So most of the things, they have not been changed when it comes to the payment of bonus. Uh, Again, paid to every employee. So bonus, as you people must be studied or must have studied or must be studying as of now. So they are to be paid to every employee who is drawing wages. So the minimum of 100 or maximum which is to be calculated in any account in an accounting year at the rate of 8 into 1 by 3% of wages, and which is applicable on minimum 20%. So this, with this formula, bonus has to be calculated, and they are to be calculated on the minimum wage, notified wage, whichever is higher. So this is important. This is an additional change which is there. So bonus has to be calculated on the higher wage, whether the minimum, if the minimum wage is higher, it will be calculated on the minimum wage. If it is calculated on the notified wage, so then they have to take the higher amount. This point again mentions that in the absence of allocable surplus, employer is not exempted from the payment of bonus, so he has to pay the bonus. But the maximum of 20%, as it was there in the Payment of Bonus Act of 1965, it is still there. So maximum 20% bonus has to be given. So bonus is calculated on the basis of allocable surplus, which is 60 to 67% of the available surplus, depending upon the corporation or depending upon the nature of the corporation, whether it is a banking company or otherwise. So it has to be paid within 8 months from the close of accounting year. Okay. So delivering this monologue is little. Uh, I hope I am audible and understandable to everybody. Am I audible?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. You could take the questions in between also, because I'm speaking and I don't know if students have or the listeners have any observation in that regard. So they may, are there any observations or should I continue?
No, ma'am, you shall continue. There's no such observations.
Okay. Now, so fixation of bonus or eligibility of payment of bonus, application of this code in respect to bonus, and specifically in the public sector. Earlier they were not they were directly a part of litigation and subject to the civil court. Now they are considered as a matter of industrial dispute within the meaning of IDA and IRC, now Industrial Relations Code, with reference to code on wages. Now let us talk about the audit requirements. So when a particular company is involved in the payment of bonus, or when an industry is involved in the payment of bonus, it is presumed that their balance sheet shall be accurate. It is going to be like, it is presumed that balance sheet will be accurate. If it is duly audited by Comptroller and Auditor General of India, or anybody who is qualified to be an auditor of the companies under 141 of the Companies Act, so same provision is applicable as to the presumption of accuracy of balance sheet. It is applicable for audit of account of employers, not being corporations or companies. If somebody is getting their files audited through the qualified auditor under 141 of the Companies Act or by CAG, then their balance sheet shall be presumed to be accurate. However, this right is not absolute. If there is a complaint, or if there is something which may sound it like there is an illegality or miscalculation, so this can be subject to scrutiny. So all the records and returns, they have to be maintained, and all the notices, they have to be maintained when it comes to the payment of bonus. However, any action taken in good faith by the employer is exempted from any of the penalty under this act. So, but that has to be proved beyond the reasonable doubt. So there are some institutions which are excluded from the applicability of the payment of bonus, which is LIC, RBI, dock workers, IC, IRC, and most importantly, universities, hospitals, and other institutions are not covered when specifically they are in the charitable sector. Other public sector institutions, they are not covered when it comes to payment of bonus. And the provisions relating to advisory board and state advisory boards may not apply. So in short, what we mean to say, if you are being covered by any other statutory authority for your promotions, for your what you call it, your service rules, or you are covered by Constitution of India, then these rules may not apply to you. So, however, it is to be noted that this code on wages is not yet in force, as I discussed earlier. However, two provisions relating to Central Advisory Board uh, and the provision relating to Section 8, which are to central government, they are in force with effect from 18th of December 2020. So this Central Advisory Board and the provision relating to the central government when it comes to Section 8 of Minimum Wages Act, corresponding Section 69 of the Code on Wages, they are in force. So this part of code is in force. Now let us talk about the next part of our discussion, which is Code on Occupational Safety, Health and Working Conditions. See, this is the second leg of our discussion. First leg was relating to the consolidation of the legislations which were relating to the payment of wages, which was relating to a bonus part, which is not directly a part of wages. When we specifically say the definition of wages in the Code on Wages, it does not include bonus, but only the statutory bonus. Statutory bonus of 8/13%, only that part is included. Otherwise, whatever additional bonus is there, that is not included. So one part was relating to the timely payment of wages by the employer in the absence of the deductions, and most importantly, to secure equal pay for equal work. Right. So now the second part, it is relating to the occupational safety, health, and working conditions. So what they have done, all the legislations relating to the safety, health, working conditions, say for example, Factories Act, and this what you call it, Building and Construction Workers Act, Cinema and Audiovisual Workers, all of them they have included. And what they have tried to do, that they have tried to ensure the ease of doing business in all these segments. So occupational safety, health and working conditions code, it is applicable on all the establishments wherein 10 or more workers are working, and it is applicable in all mines and docks. And for mines and docks, this occupational health and safety code is applicable even if there is one worker. However, the central government and state government offices and any ship of war, they are exempted from this code. But if the contract labor is employed through contractors in the central government office or a state government office, then it will be applicable on them also. But directly central government and state government offices, government offices, not the government run enterprises offices, but purely the government offices, this will not be applicable. Now let us see various legislation. So this is the legislation which has consolidated maximum number of this code has consolidated maximum number of legislations. We can have a look on all these legislations. It is important for us to note that there were around 180 compliances before that. Now these compliances, they have been reduced to 50% by this code, Occupational Safety, Health and Working Conditions Code of 2020. Factories, plantations, mines, working journalists, motor transport workers, BD and cigar, contractual labor, sales promotions employees, migrant workmen, cinema workers, dock workers, and building and other construction workers. So all these legislations, they have been consolidated by this Occupational Safety, Health and Working Conditions Code of 2020. Now let us understand the components of this code. See, one stop destination, one window is to be created for the license of contract workers, factories, BD and cigar workers. So one license, one window wherein through this the factory's license will be applied also and will be renewed also. Similarly, this code provides that what should be the health and working conditions. These are very basic factors which are otherwise also available there in the previous legislations. The potable water, ventilation, the working hours. I'll be coming to the working hours separately. The welfare provisions, restrooms, first aids, and this code also talks about the responsibilities of the employers, employees, manufacturers, and other parties. So other parties, again, I'll be coming in a short while. And there is another term which is called presumed registration when it comes to the occupational safety, health and working conditions code. If you are already registered in the Factories Act, say for example you registered in March 25 and this code came into force in 1st of April 25, then your registration will be presumed registration for the purpose of this code. Now, how the registration was simplified? A single registration now is required. Earlier, what used to happen? First of all, you have to register yourself as a factory if you are involved in the manufacturing process. If you have hired contractual labor, then you have to register yourself as the contractual labor contractor. And you have to register yourself as somebody who is involved in the plantation. You have to register yourself as an interstate migrant contractor and a motor transport worker. All these registrations were separate. Even now they are separate. The code is not yet in force now. So there are separate registration under 6 acts. But now the single registration has been made. So also the provisions of online registration have been incorporated. As I mentioned earlier, one single window will be created at the website and all these registrations will be taken place at that particular window. Also, it has been made mandatory that once this code comes into existence, all the establishments which are covered by this particular code, within 60 days, they have to register themselves with the government. And for the purpose of electronic registration, Shram Suvidha portal, Government of India has created this portal. It is already in force. So some states, they are already registering themselves, and some employers, they are registering themselves on Shram Suvidha portal. So the certificate of registration, it is automatically generated after you fulfill the criteria. However, it will be issued within 7 days. And also it is to be noted that closure is to be notified within 30 days and after the verification of payment of all the dues. Now, how the ease of doing business and governance is ensured through the Occupational Safety, Health and Working Conditions Code. It has been made mandatory by the code for the employer to notify the facilitator that the establishment is starting a particular task. Establishment has completed a particular task through the online mode. There are two timelines. First is the 60 days when you are to register yourself within 60 days. But if you are starting a particular task, or if for the purpose of which you were to register yourself, and if you have started a particular you have taken up a particular task, then you have to, within 30 days, you have to mention it to the facilitator. And also this information will be automatically shared with the other two portals, that is EPFO and ESIC, automatically. So this is how you need not to fill the separate registrations, and this data will be automatically shared to these two important forms. Now let us say a factory has started the manufacturing process a factory has received the registration certificate from the employer, and now it needs to start the manufacturing process. So once it receives the registration certificate from the government, then again it has to mention to the government that within these 30 days we are starting, or we have completed the work, or this factory is shutting down, right? Or this work is over. So then that has to be updated to the facilitator, and also the same information will be automatically shared with the other two bodies. See, basically what happens, what they do is they have the name of the individuals who are working as the employees and workers with you. See, these requirements, they are not to add additional fuss in the already already a bundle of compliances are there. It is not to make any additional changes in that, but the thing is, when we specifically talk about the human resources law, the government must have a data of the individuals who are actually working in a particular establishment. So that is why what used to happen earlier in this Inspector Raj thing, the register was maintained and there was hardly anything which could compel the employer to take the responsibility of the worker, because they were only considered with the with the number, and they were not considered for the employee, that who is the organic person who is after this. They were only considered about the labor, that all right, 60 individuals are coming, 100 individuals are coming, who are those two individuals, those 100 individuals, they were not concerned about that. That is why majority of the benefits, they were not actually traced back to the individuals who were entitled to it. So that is why this automatic sharing on information, data integration has been done in a manner that once the data is uploaded on portal, it will be automatically shared with the other portals which are relating to the social security thing, as we can see. Now, these are different authorities which have been set up. First is the National Occupational Safety and Health Advisory Board. Similar advisory boards have to be constituted at the national and state level. Then safety committees. And this body, we have already understood, the inspector cum facilitator, the additional duties of inquiring into accidents and conducting inspections, and all other duties of inspector which he was doing prior to this code, they have been kept intact. Now, National Occupational Safety and Health Advisory Board. This board is to be constituted by the central government. Now, this is something new in this code. See, earlier the responsibility of the employer was relating to, or it was restricted to the factory only, right? And it was the point of contention was that whatever he is manufacturing and the individuals who are in the process of manufacturing, so the law used to cover that part only. Now it has been made mandatory that if the employer is importing an equipment, so that person who is supplying that particular equipment, he has to give the undertaking that actual safety test has been conducted on that equipment. So the design is user friendly, the manufacturing process of that particular product or import is not involving any hazardous step, or they are fit to use. So as we call it, the delivery inspection has to be carried out. Again, it has been made a part of the this occupational safety, health and working conditions code. So how the working conditions will be made uh, 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 made easy for the individuals or safe for the individual, so that the security net of a particular legislation is expanded to everybody. So employer is under the obligation to take this certificate from the individual who is designing the building, the individuals who are supplying the equipments for the manufacturing process, or he's importing, or he's using any raw material for the purpose of converting it into the final product in any establishment. So there has to be a test and the examination, and also the proper manual of use of that article, examination and guarantee of its safety and health should be given at this point of time. So otherwise what used to happen is substandard materials, and again it is an RTI information that 40% of the Indian factories, they do not follow these factory regulations, they do not follow health and safety regulations. And also it is important for them that the designers, manufacturers, importers and suppliers, they have to follow the central government's regulations. So basically what used to happen, the blame game was there, that some individuals, they say that we are only responsible for this factory, so they were not taking any responsibility ki, we have imported this from supplier. So whole of the supply chain is covered under this particular code. It is not only the factory or the establishment where work is being carried out, the whole supply chain, starting from the designer, the manufacturer, the contractors, everyone is being made liable under this code, and they have to follow the regulations governing the occupational safety, health and advisory board. Also, they are required to conduct additional tests and examinations guarantee that results are accessible. This part is important because earlier this was not there. Request to have the data sharing. So what were the tests which were conducted, how this machine has been made safe for the purpose of use by the individuals, and what are the process and what is the procedure and protocol to mitigate the hazards. So these points, additional in safety provisions, they have been added. The duties of architect, project engineer, and designer. This again is a set of compliances which have been made mandatory, and additional duties have been given. So earlier there were no mention of architect, project engineer, and designer. So if a building is a factory safe or not safe, so earlier with these individuals, they were not responsible, but now everyone who is contributing directly or indirectly for a particular unit has been made responsible. Now these provisions, they are very important, and there is a lot of debate regarding this. See, as a matter of fact, this is the only law in India which talks about the hours of work, specifically when it comes to the applicability of this code. So when we say the establishment, it includes every establishment, every workplace, barring central government and state government offices, where any trade, manufacturing, or occupation is carried out wherein 10 or more workers are employed. If I look at myself, this provision is applicable on me, right? But when we say the definition part herein, sorry, this word has been used. The workers are employed. That is why we focused on the definition of the workers in the beginning. So this is how the applicability is restricted. Any industry, trade, business, manufacturing, or occupation is carried out in which 10 or more workers are employed. So categorically, otherwise we are workers, but if we are employed in a supervisory capacity and drawing wages exceeding 15,000 rupees, then we are not workers. And also, if you are appointed in a managerial and administrative capacity, you are not a worker. Therefore, these working hours, they are not applicable on you. So you can work 6 days a week, and the definition of day starts is at a stretch 24 hours from the midnight. So if an individual is working for in a span of a day, so he is allowed to work for only 8 hours, and that 8 hours could be any 8 hours. So these 8 hours could be 12 to 8 or any 8 hours. So there is no restriction of work shift or morning shift or evening shift or night shift. There is no such restriction. Yes, as a matter of fact, overtime wages are always paid at the rate of twice at the rate of wages, not the twice of wages, but the rate of wages. Now let us have a much debated provision which is relating to special provision for women. See, till now, in no Indian law talks about the night shift for a particular woman. Barring the BPOs, the call centers, there is a special regulation for them. But barring this Factories Act, there is no provision in India which allows a night shift for women. However, the code has made a substantial change. And if a female is consenting to work beyond 7 p.m. and before 6 a.m., subject to the employer's compliances. So what are the employer's compliances here in these cases? Employer is supposed to arrange transport to and fro the women's residence, and it is his duty to drop her off and pick her up when she is made to work in the night shift. But this is not applicable on the BPO industry. There are separate regulations. I'm repeating again at the cost of repetition, and these are not applicable for the night security guards, females. So, but the restrictions relating to safety, holidays, and working hours, they have to be kept in mind before allocating a night duty for a female. Yes, government can forbid women from working in some night operations, which could be detrimental to health and safety risks. Another important aspect of this is that Social Security Fund is constituted in this code also for all the workers, wherein any penalty collected or at any point of time, some companies that are involved in CSR, they are spending some 2% of their collected fund for this CSR. Even that particular amount can be used for the Social Security Fund. Yes. Another landmark change is that the jurisdiction of civil courts is barred in these codes. Thus, the labor courts, they have been given the jurisdiction to sort these issues as expeditiously as possible. Now, let us, now this is the third leg of our discussion, which is Social Security Code. Before I move on to the Social Security Code, let me clarify one point again at the cost of repetition that I'm just giving you an elevated view of the codes. There is a lot more when it comes to the codes. The discussion could stretch up to 6 hours, but I was told to keep it to 2 hours only. uh, there is a lot more in detail which has to be discussed because given the time frame which has been given to me, so it's little difficult to give all the information in detail. So if you have any observation, you can share it with the moderator and we can have the discussion. Now, the third part of our discussion, it is relating to the Social Security Code. Now, one thing is very common and one thing is very clear, and this we might think on these grounds that what is the requirement of the Social Security Code. And despite of the fact that all of us, we nowadays in the organized sector, we go for one or other kind of employment security which is given by the employer in the form of medical insurance or family insurance or something like that. Then why the Social Security Code? As a part of ILO convention, and we as a signatory to ILO convention, what we have done, we have actually consolidated a plethora of legislation to one Social Security Code which was relating to the insurance, pension, gratuity and maternity benefit. So these basic four legislations, different legislations covering these parts, they were consolidated in order to have one comprehensive Social Security Code. Now let us discuss what is there in these Social Security codes. Before I move on to the code, let us have a discussion on these points. Once in force, this code is going to take away these important offices which are existing now. The Provident Fund Central Board will cease to exist. The executive committee constituted under Employees Provident Fund and Miscellaneous Provisions Act, it is not going to remain. The Employee State Insurance Corporation is going to go away. The Medical Benefit Council, the Standing Committee, and the board constituted under the Building and Other Construction Workers Act and the CES Act, they are going to go away, and these offices will cease to exist. They are not going to be in force anymore after the code will come into force. Now, let us have a look at another set of legislations which are planned to be repealed by Social Security Code of 2020 or consolidated by the Social Security Code of 2020. See, the arrangement of codes has been made in such a way that one particular code could manage the registration when it comes to the employment opportunities, as we discussed in the Occupational Safety, Health and Welfare and Working Conditions Code. So all the registration part has been sorted in that code. All the wages related part and the payment related part has been taken care in the code on wages. All the illegal penalties and the facilitation and the inspection by the factories inspector and the wage inspector, this has been consolidated in the code on wages. So they have tried to club the legislations in a manner wherein the major security part is covered by the Social Security Code, wages part and all the matters allied or related to the wages, they are covered under the code on wages, and all the health conditions and registration and additional responsibilities, they are being covered under the Occupational Safety, Health and Working Conditions Code. See, the one thing is to be noted here that earlier Factories Act was considered as the comprehensive legislation, and specifically after the Bhopal tragedy, it was amended a lot, wherein the additional responsibility and additional liability was imposed on the employer when it comes to the sensitization of the villagers also. All these provisions with the better face and with the better implementation scheme have been incorporated in the this Occupational Safety, Health and Working Conditions Code. Now just have a look at these legislations. They all are dealing with one common point, which is relating to the compensation or security. compensation and security, be it Maternity Benefit Act, Gratuity Act, Cine Worker Welfare Fund Act, Building and Other Construction Work Act, Unorganized Worker Social Security Act, all these legislations, they are talking about one point only. Now, they have the database of the registration process, which was carried out for the factories, for the building and construction workers, right? All these database is there. Now, this has nothing to do with the employability or the employment or the security when it comes to the use of equipment and when it comes to the operationalization of a factory. They are not holding anybody responsible for the health and safety thing. However, they work on this presumption that if any contingency arises, these legislations will come to picture. So in this background, we start with the Social Security Code, which is the third code for our discussion now. Now, for that matter, I have quoted what is Social Security. Section 2, subclause 78 talks about the Social Security. Now, when we take the perspective of the organized sector, and from the other side, we will take the perspective of the unorganized sector. Now, the concept is very, very, very interesting and simple. Before this particular code took off, there was a session in Lok Sabha at the time of COVID when there was a public interest litigation was filed by prominent lawyers, including Kapil Sibal, in the Supreme Court, that what government is doing for the migrant laborers, as it was reported in one of the magazines and the social media also, that around 97 individuals, they have lost their lives on the trains only when they were trying to board a train during the COVID times. And many of them, they were made to walk for thousands of kilometers to reach their native places. So when this particular question that what state government is doing and what is the number of unorganized laborers, interstate migrants in India, the government of India was not having any concrete answer, because till date, no official data was released and no consolidated database was there. Government was absolutely clueless on this. I can share one document in which, as of now, I have not added it, in which this particular point was raised. And simply the Minister of Labor and Employment mentioned that this one law is there, which is called Interstate Migrant Laborers Act of 1979. It is there. And the states are taking the appropriate action because it is a it's a state sphere. So states are taking the appropriate actions. So what about the social security to the 90% of the workforce? Social security to the 90% of the workforce, which happens to be in the unorganized sector. After this wake up call was given and Shramik portal was created, Atal Bima Yojana was created, many other schemes in the name of Prime Minister were floated for the purpose of registration, for the purpose of making a database, for the purpose of giving them the social security. It was considered. Another important term which was coming out of these discussion was gig workers and platform workers. And also one term which are called aggregators. When I say aggregators, please don't consider them the account aggregators, which you may be knowing better than me. But aggregators, gig workers, unorganized workers, all these and platform workers, all these terms were coming to fore many, many times. So government thought of addressing them also. So then they considered that social security is something which should be given to each one of them. So to employees which are working in unorganized sector, platform workers and gig workers, as I mentioned, for the purpose of access to healthcare, income security, old age security, sickness, invalidity, work injury, maternity, or loss of a breadwinner. So in order to take care of all these contingencies, so some rights, some benefits should be provided to the individuals coming from unorganized sectors also. Obviously, the organized sector also under this particular code. So this is the meaning of social security. Now let us see what has happened when it comes to the social security. First of all, I'll be focusing on the organized sector. Employees Provident Fund. See, employee is a very relevant term. Employee comes from the term when you already have somebody who is called employer, right? So herein the employer-employee relationship establishes, and the applicability of all the four codes, it is there. So when we say employees provident fund, it is applicable on all the establishment in which 20 or more employees are employed. It is to be noted here that this calculation has to be done on the yearly average basis. So codes are very clear. Once you are registered as an organization which has 20 employees, even you reduce the strength to 10 to 5, then there is no escape. Once you have registered, you have to go for the employees provident fund. Then another is just 1 second. I think I need to put my laptop on charger. Just 1 second. Okay. So the next is employees state insurance. So again, 10 or more per persons if they are employed other than a seasonal factory. So state insurance is not applicable to a seasonal factory. Gratuity is applicable to possibly every enterprise. So we'll be coming to the gratuity later on, because the concept of gratuity, it has taken a new dimension after these codes, and we'll have a detailed discussion on gratuity, that how it is affecting the industrial relations code also, and ease of doing business also. So every factory, mine, oil field, and every shop or establishment, this is very important to note. Shops and establishments, they are not included in any code. If you are planning to start up a business or a trade, or a place wherein you wish to carry out any industrial activity, manufacturing goods or services, it means that even if you are establishing an office, you need to have yourself registered under the Shops and Establishments Act. Again, this has to be calculated on the preceding average of preceding 12 months. Maternity benefit, 10 or more, it is mandatory that maternity benefit has to be given to possibly all the females in an industry or a factory wherein 10 or more females are working. We are continuing with the same. So employees compensation. So earlier also, the Employees Compensation Act of 1923 and Employees State Insurance Act of 1947, these two legislations, they are exclusive when it comes to the benefits. So if you are claiming the benefit from the Employees Compensation Act, then you cannot claim the benefit under the Employees State Insurance Act. So that is what it has been mentioned in the schedule of this code, that it is applicable only to the employees who are excluded from the employee state insurance. So when it comes to social security cess in respect of building and other construction workers, so for building and other construction workers, every establishment which falls under the building and other construction work, they will have to give the social security cess. Next is the social security for unorganized workers. This is gig worker and platform worker. So when we say gig worker is the one who actually takes up a particular work. He takes the payment, but he is not in the direct employer employee relationship. He works for a particular project. As many of us, we do these kinds of work. When we say that we are not actually employed, freelance work, which we can say, but there is no guarantee that you will get the work or project again, or there is no guarantee that you will be getting the minimum wages. There is no guarantee that the working hours will be followed. So otherwise, there is another work called platform work. It's just this the Ola work, and the one online platform is given, and you are working on that particular platform. And the last one is the applicability of employment information and monitoring. Around 50 years old legislation which was relating to employment exchanges. It is going to go now, and this employment information and monitoring, it has been given to the career centers, vacancy persons seeking the services of career centers and employers. So every time in a particular factory or an establishment, a vacancy is there, it has been mandatory for them to make it public. So list of vacancies, it has been made mandatory under this code to make the individuals aware of these. Now let us understand the governing bodies and their modalities. Board of Trustees has to be constituted for the Employees Provident Fund. Employees State Insurance Corporation, the same, the old body, but with the new code. National Social Security Board and State Unorganized Workers Board, again, it has to be constituted. Earlier, these all were separate. Next is Constitution of State Building Workers Welfare Board. And if you carefully look at these sections, as I have mentioned here, all the appointments are majorly controlled by the central government. So the eligibility and who all are going to be there, and what is the composition, and everything is to be controlled by the central government. Yes. However, for the purpose of social security, any contribution which is made by the employee and the contractor by the employer, it will be considered under the Income Tax Act of 1961. So they will be considered for the purpose of taxation and exemption from taxation under the Income Tax Act of 1961. And yes, also the priority of payment and contributions over the debts under the Insolvency and Bankruptcy Code of 2016. So until unless these contributions and debts, they are not sorted out, the individuals may not get, the corporations and the employers, they may not get a green signal from the Insolvency and Bankruptcy Code and NCLT accordingly. In those proceedings also, these contributions, they play an eminent role in order to get a clearance from IBC and NCLT or NCLAT. Going again with the modalities, the accounts of these social security organizations, the Provident Fund body, the Employee State Insurance Corporation, the Building and Construction Workers Board, and every board which has been constituted for the purpose of providing social security, it has to be audited on the mandatory basis by the Comptroller and Auditor General of India. And each of these social security organization is mandated to provide an annual report detailing its operation and budget, and it has to be ultimately approved by the organization to the relevant government. So government has to be given this, and it is also mentioned on record that these reports may be presented before the Parliament of India. Now let us discuss the Employees Provident Fund. I think this is just a matter of repetition because most of you must be aware of the Employees Provident Fund scheme. So employers, they must contribute 10%. However, there is a provision that employees may contribute more, but there is a limit on the employees' contribution also. So employer will contribute only 10% of the employees' wages, regardless of direct or the contractor employment. So he has to pay, even if he is paying for the employees who have been hired through the contractor. Later on, he can recover those amount from the contractors. So also it is mentioned that employer must establish a pension scheme for each employee contributing not more than 8.13% of the wages. So this he has to pay, and 1% of the insurance scheme. So under all the circumstances, a particular limit of 20%, I think, has been set, that beyond that employer will not contribute. So this is the maximum amount that he has to contribute, and in wherever there are statutory requirements, the maximum amount has been set. Now, next is the employees' state insurance. All the employees must be insured. There is no point which mentions that there is going to be a set that Badali workmen will not be insured, or this only regular employees are going to be insured. Everyone who has given 1 year of continuous service has to be insured from the Employees State Insurance Corporation. So minimum 1 year of continuous service. Continuous service is having the same definition that if the individual is having an annual contract, and if he has worked for 240 days out of 365 days, it will be considered that he has worked for one continuous year. So the benefits at the nature of sickness, maternity, medical, occupational diseases, and dependents benefits, they are to be accorded to the beneficiaries of Employee State Insurance Fund. Also, at this point of time, please note that schemes for unorganized workers, gig workers, and platform workers and members of their families can also be floated. So there is a catch. Now, this code mentions two tiers of schemes for the purpose of unorganized workers. For the organized workers, things were already very much sorted. So if you want to contribute, if you are not earning more than 21,000, you can get the Employee State Insurance Fund. So if your salary is beyond that, then certain other laws will be applicable on you. Otherwise, Provident Fund employer can contribute, you can contribute. This thing was working already. But for the unorganized workers, nothing was there on record. Now comes the point. Two tier of schemes have been proposed to be floated under this Social Security Code. One is to be regulated by the central government and one is to be regulated by the state government. So there is a duality of schemes. Earlier there were hardly any schemes, but now there is a duality of schemes. That this government will do this state government is there, can float these schemes. Nowhere it is mentioned in the code that what exactly will be done by the government and from where the fund is going to come. Every time they have used the word may. So this is the main reason. And also let us see further. Okay, I think it ends here. Then we'll move on to the gratuity, but let me finish it here. Only next slide is for gratuity. So see, when it comes to the giving the actual benefits, what they have done is that they have created a Shram portal which has to be linked with Aadhaar on the mandatory basis. After that, they have this Shramik Bima Yojana. For that also, you need to contribute from rupees 55 to 200 in the pension fund. But if you have attained the age of more than 40, you cannot. Below the age of 40, you have to contribute, and up to the age of 60, you can contribute. And after that, there is a sum of, I think, rupees 3,000 which will come to you. So, for that matter, you have to first contribute yourself. And government may issue one fund or other fund because if they collect some penalties, if they collect some amount, and some amount is coming from the CSR thing, some scheme is coming from these like some amount is coming from any other scheme, so that amount will be disbursed. So hardly so when we see the actual working of these things, there is hardly anything which is so concrete on ground. Also see, in today's scenario, when we see people are striving to get this doing very hard and uh, running from pillar to post for this Ayushman Bharat card, these kind of schemes, they need to have a strict implementation mechanism for the purpose of them being fructified in any positive manner. So this was about employees state insurance. Now let us talk about gratuity. Gratuity has to be paid after the minimum service of 5 years to in an establishment where 10 or more employees they are gainfully employed. Uh, so the calculation of gratuity is calculated in the same manner as it used to be in the previous act. See, there is a major change when it comes to the application of gratuity laws. So what Government of India has done, this thing you must be knowing already, this the whatever I have written on screen. What Government of India has done, in new labor code, they have introduced the term called fixed employment, and the minimum term of fixed employment is not fixed. So what they have done, they have changed the concept of social security, and the minimum service of 5 years can be waived off if the person has been hired on a fixed employment. Even if somebody has even if somebody has done a work for 1 year, even then he is entitled to gratuity under the new code. Right. So this concept has undergone a major change, but rest of the provisions, they are same. The calculation part is same, but it is quite clear that that gratuity is always paid at the time of farewell, or at the time when the employee voluntarily or involuntarily leaves the job. So that is why the term contract termination is there. So the concept of continuous service, as I have already spoken, the uninterrupted service is considered as the continuous service, and interruptions on account of valid strike, interruptions on account of medical leave, interruptions on account of any other admissible leave is not considered as an interruption, and individual is considered to be in the continuous service. Nomination part, when it comes to the this availing the benefit, if the individual doesn't survive, then any of the nominees, they can have the benefit and the amount which is due in the form of gratuity. And the amount determination of amount of gratuity maximum limit has been increased to 20 lakhs, and again it has been made mandatory for the employer to go for the compulsory insurance for all the employees in the establishment wherein 10 or more workers, 10 or more employees are working in a for wages. And also the competent authority in this code, it is going to have the powers of the civil court. As I have mentioned earlier, civil courts, the jurisdiction of civil court has been barred, but the competent authority which has been established under this code, it is going to have the powers of civil courts. Now let us talk about the much talked about discussion which is on maternity benefit. So when we say maternity benefit, one thing which all of us is aware of, that nowadays 26 weeks of maternity benefit can be claimed by every female who is working in an establishment. But again, there are certain other modalities of maternity benefit which should be known to all of us. If a female has delivered a baby or within 6 weeks, so she cannot be compelled to join, and her time of employment may start after that period. So she timely payment of maternity benefit should be given to that lady. Timely payment of maternity benefit should be given to that lady, and the maternity benefit will be continued to be given in case she is claiming additional benefit, that is half pay, half day, half pay, and it could continue up to a particular time period. And in case the female, uh, God forbids, if she loses her life on account of maternity, even then the maternity benefit has to be given. Medical bonus at the rate of 3,500 rupees has to be given, and she should be allowed the nursing breaks. Crèche facilities, again there is a discussion on this. Earlier there was a provision that we have to have the crèche facilities. Now what they have done, that there should be a collective, a common place, by it could be shared by uh, it could be shared by 2 or 3 factories or associations, then that will do for them. Yes, dismissal for absence during pregnancy is not allowed. There will not be deduction of wages for the first 26 weeks. And maternity benefit can be forfeited if the female has already started working at somewhere else. If like if she has already started working on the remuneration at some places, then that maternity benefit can be forfeited. Now let us talk about the remaining provisions. So this this code talks about employees compensation in case of death, disability. Disability could be permanent and temporary. Please remember this thing, that employees compensation will only be activated if the person is not claiming the benefit under the employee state insurance. Even for the purpose of employees compensation, it has been made mandatory that employer should go for the insurance. Right. So in case of death and disability, the compensation has to be paid. Please remember that compensation in case of disability is always more than the compensation, disability, that too of permanent nature. So the compensation for permanent disability is more than the compensation in case of death. So it is mandatory to have a building and construction workers cess from all the contractors, from all the companies, and it is a provision which is applicable through RERA also, which is applicable on real estate authorities also. So this cess has to be collected for the purpose of compulsory submission to the building and construction worker welfare board. And social security for unorganized sector, again it is contingent to their Aadhaar verification. Through that Aadhaar verification, a universal account number, UAN, as the government claims it, that this number is portable, and as we know that one nation, one ration card is there. So this is again an extension of that itself. A similar kind of number is to be given. and it will be good for ESIC, EPFO, and unorganized sector workers. So one card will be okay for all the things. So also there is a provision of National Social Security Board, the State Social Security Board. As I mentioned, that duality of the provisions are there, and nobody is clear like कि actual में ये किसका काम है, like which authority is to establish which welfare provision. So the duality leaves many of the unorganized workers complicated, their situation complicated when it comes to claiming of benefits. Yes, a remarkable work has been carried out, but more clarity is required when it comes to the actual implementation of these schemes. Now, let us have the essence of changes. First is the first time acknowledgement of providing social security benefits, life insurance and disability benefit, health and maternity benefit, provident fund, skill upgradation to workers in the unorganized sectors. That is why the skill upgradations, Pradhan Mantri Kaushal Vikas Yojana again was an offshoot of these schemes, because it was realized that if you are not able to skillfully enrich, intellectually capacitate those individuals, they contribute a lot to the economy. But the social security benefits should be given to them. And a concept of deemed wages. Now let us see what is the concept of deemed wages. So if somebody is receiving more than 50% of the total remuneration, so आधी से ज़्यादा remuneration if that person is having in the form of allowances and other amounts, which is otherwise not included in the definition of wages, right? Then the excess amount would be deemed to be the wages for the purpose of contributions toward EPF. If like it's as simple as that, if he is receiving more than 50% in the form of allowances, and that particular allowance is not included within the definition of wages, then whatever extra is having, it will be considered for the purpose of contributions towards the employees provident fund. Now let us jump to, and is there any discussion which is required at this point of time, and then we'll move on to the industrial relations code. Should I do want me to deliberate something on the previous slides, or should I start with the industrial relations code?
There is no such observation, ma'am. You can continue.
Okay, thank you. Now, the most important part of our discussion, which is industrial relations code, and I have tried to keep it short and crisp, only for the purpose of ease of doing business, specifically with reference to the employer hire and fire policies. So these are the three legislations which have been proposed to be repealed, come consolidated in the industrial relations code. Now let us discuss the main features of this code. First term is industry. So there is a substantial change in the definition of industry from the Industrial Disputes Act. This particular term industry, it has now they have done away with the minimum requirement of the persons involved, and they have done away with the uh, provisions relating to the what kind of business which should be carried out. It simply says that if the with the cooperation of employer and employee, certain work is carried out in the form of production of goods and generation of services, but they have expressly excluded any spiritual activity, and the only requirement is that it should be carried out to satisfy human wants and wishes. The same thing they have taken from the Bangalore water supply versus A Rajappa, a landmark judgment of Indian Supreme Court, in which the definition of the term was of industry was expanded until date, even after state of UP versus Javeer Singh 2005. That particular this definition is not changed, but still they are going with the same thing. So if a particular activity, irrespective of the motive, irrespective of the capital influx, if it engages employer and employee to do something which is in relation to business, trade, manufacturing of goods or services, then it will be considered as an industry. Any charitable or philanthropic activity has been expressly excluded, and domestic services, they have been excluded. Now essence with respect to industry is there is a landmark change which is known as fixed term employment. Fixed term employment. Now, this is one term which has been celebrated by various employers, and this is one offshoot of ease of doing business with from Government of India, that they have introduced fixed term employment. Now, there is one important part about fixed term employment. It simply mentions that the one who is engaged for fixed term employment, he will be eligible to all statutory benefits. He will be eligible for gratuity, even if he is serving for 1 year. As a matter of fact, minimum time period for fixed term employment has not been mentioned. So this code is highlighting, it is underscoring hire and fire policy like anything. Pro rata basis, you will be given the gratuity. As I mentioned, gratuity has undergone a major change. You will be given the benefit of gratuity. You will be given the every benefit which is otherwise available to a regular employee, even if you work for minimum for 1 year. But it is possible that individual can be made to go before 1 year, because minimum time period for fixed term employment has not been mentioned in the code. Also, they have gone up to the extent to revise the definition of retrenchment. And also they have, because otherwise this term retrenchment, many times we have heard this word retrenchment, but it requires a lot of deliberation. It simply says that if you are made to leave on the expiry of your contract, before your before your superannuation or before your retirement, or you are voluntarily resigning, you are not resigning, uh, then even then it is called retrenchment. But if you are if your fixed term employment is expired, even then you will be considered as retrenched. So you will be, so they have tried to cover it up in a manner that even the retrenched person will be entitled to all the statutory benefits, including gratuity, even if he is serving for 1 year. So this is something on which most of the trade unions, they are not happy, because the employment security, earlier the employment security was at a different platform, but now the specific provisions like this, they are I personally consider that they are detrimental to the job security. I sincerely feel that these types of provisions, they should not be there. Social security is not going to do anything if you are not able to generate the sufficient employments, and if you are using these terms in a manner wherein you are empowering the employer to go vehemently go after hire and fire policy. So social security will not serve any purpose. Yes, another important term, the term employee has been introduced in the Industrial Relations Code, which was not there in the Industrial Disputes Act. And this employee's definition is same as we have discussed in the Code on Wages. And it doesn't include your apprentices, it doesn't include the armed forces, the police services. But if somebody has been hired or employed to do manual, technical, supervisory, clerical work, then that person will be considered as the employee. So also the definition of worker has been changed. Worker is the new definition. Earlier the definition was workman, sorry. Now it is worker, and it includes the sales, promotion employees and working journalists also, as we have discussed in the Code on Wages. Those, so the definition of worker is same. Now, another important part which I wish to use for the support of my argument, and that is retrenchment. Earlier, for the purpose of scrutinizing your workforce, you need to follow two principles. First is, if you are planning to retrench or let go your workers, if you are working in industry wherein 100 or more workers are employed, you have to give a notice to the government and bring government in picture. So, but now you are given a free hand to retrench any number of workmen if your industry is having 300 workers. Same provision, similar provision they have used for layoff. So you can lay off anybody. If your workforce is 300, you can lay off anybody. And if your workforce is 300, you can retrench anybody. There is no requirement of government intervention. But earlier provision was, for the purpose of retrenchment or for the purpose of layoff, you need to bring government to picture. ask them about this thing that we are going to retrench, and possible industrial dispute could be tackled at that stage. But now these provisions, they are done away with. So they are given free hand up to 300 workers. Also, see, there was a provision of, I should not use this word flash strike, but there was a provision of flash strike in the Industrial Disputes Act. But when the code will come into force, it is going to be over with the provision of flash strikes. So what is your flash strike? Flash strike is that you need not to give a notice of any kind, and you can straight away go for a strike. And the instant strike provision was applicable only to non-public utility services. But now there cannot be a strike in any of the industrial establishment without a notice period of 60 days before strike. And also another provision which is added, if the workforce of employees they are planning to take a mass casual leave, and it constitutes 50% of the workforce, it will again be considered as a strike. So why strike is relevant for us if somebody is not working? Because in any industry, if you are availing a leave, if you are absent from the duty without a justified reason, it will be considered as absent, and no work, no pay rule will be applicable on you. So in the end of the slide, you can see two points which I have written in red. And I want you to emphasize on the first word, no person. And second is no employer. And the third one is worker. So the first point talks about the strike. So strike is prohibited in any industrial establishment according to the Industrial Relations Code to any person employed, irrespective of his status as a worker, irrespective of his status as an employee. That fellow is not allowed to go for strike unless he has given a notice period of 60 days. So strike is not allowed, and if somebody is taking a recourse of strike, appropriate legal provisions may be applied on that particular individual. Similarly, when we say lockout, lockout is the term which is generally used as an antidote of strike. And if the workers they are going on strike, the employer has an option to go for the lockout. So no employer of an industrial establishment can go for lockout. So lockout is applicable on workers, but strike is prohibited for each and every person which is involved in the establishment according to the labor code. Yes, another important landmark is here in this case is workers' complaints are expected to be settled within 1 year time frame through the tribunal. A tribunal is supposed to wind all the disputes within 1 year time frame. Next is industrial tribunals composed of two members. One is the administrative member and one is the judicial members. And the code has gone up to the extent that even if one of the members is absent, the proceedings can still continue. Yes, another important part. This is something which was much anticipated, which was much required, and Government of India is trying to bring this provision from last 65 years. Industrial Disputes Act and the Trade Unions Act collectively have this collective bargaining thing. However, there was no express provision despite of the amendment in 1948 wherein a trade union has to be officially recognized by the employer. Despite only Maharashtra, they had this particular provision in which the trade union can be recognized by the employer, but other states, they were not having any provisions. There was no provision in the central legislation, to be straight. However, it has been mentioned in the Industrial Relations Code that if a trade union possesses 51% of the votes of the working class, it will be considered as negotiating council, and this will be considered as this negotiating union, and this union will be able to go for the collective bargaining with the employers, and they can reach the agreements with the employers. So whosoever is having 51% of the votes shall be considered as the negotiating council and negotiating union for the purpose of collective bargaining. Also, earlier there was a provision, and that provision was not clear as to the office bearers. There are many politicians who were earlier part of trade unions, Prakash Karat, Mamta Banerjee. There are a lot of the individuals who have uh, like made their careers through the political unions, trade unions. And hardly anything was there in the act which could say that the office bearer should be actually working in the establishment or the industry. So now the provision is that 1/3 of the office bearers or five. Matlab, whosoever is the office bearer is, say for example, if there are 20 office bearers, 1/3 of 20 should be working in the trade unions establishment or industry. So earlier this provision was not there. Anyone who used to have that purse, they could be the trade union, the leader of the trade union or the office bearers. And also the limitation period has been introduced earlier under section 33C. There was no limitation period for the purpose of recovery of any amount which was due from the employer. Not now that limitation period is 1 year. Another provision of reskilling funds, which is 15 days average salary in case of retrenchment, in case of the fact that individual is has lost the job, then 15 days average salary. Otherwise, retrenchment compensation is intact, which is 15 days average salary multiplied by each year of continuous service has to be given to the employee who has been retrenched. But reskilling funds is the new concept which has come. And also another important part, the application of standing orders. Again, the similar provision, it has been extended to 300 persons. Earlier, 100 persons, they were governed by the Standing Orders Act. Now, only this provision has been lifted to 300. What are standing orders? Basically, they are the minute-to-minute working and the protocol through which an industry should work. These are the standing orders, and state governments and the central government, they prepare model standing orders, and each industry in that particular state, they are required to frame their standing orders in accordance with those model standing orders which have been provided by the states. So earlier they were required, if your workforce exceeds 100, then you were required to follow the standing orders of the government. But now it has been extended to 300 persons. So again, up to 300, you are given a free hand. In whatever manner you wish to make your industry go, you can go. Now, another important part, the penalties have been increased and compounding of offenses has been included in the Industrial Relations Code. So if you are ready to pay a 50% of the maximum fine, then your offense could be compounded. And also, if you are paying 75% of such offense, which is punishable by fine, then that offense will be commuted. But this is possible only, 50% thing is possible if the offense is punishable by fine only. And again, I mentioned the last part, the no minimum fixed term is mentioned. So fixed term employment is there, but what is the minimum time period fixed term employment? It is not mentioned there. Now, let us have a brief discussion on the judicial observations, which are very, very important when it comes to the Industrial Relations Code. First one is the right to strike is not a fundamental right to anybody. We have the right to association according to Government of India. The Constitution of India, we have the right to association, but right to strike cannot be claimed as a matter of fundamental right, as it was held in All India Bank Employees Association versus National Industrial Tribunal. Also, in T.K. Rangarajan versus Government of Tamil Nadu, it was mentioned that government servants, they do not have a fundamental or equitable right to go on strike. So if you are working for the government, you cannot claim that you have this fundamental or equitable right to go on strike. This was the case in which around 200 doctors, they were suspended because they went on a strike. This is altogether a subject matter of another 2 hours lecture, but I'll try to keep it short. Next, controversial judgment which came in the year 2024, Ravi Kumar Dhansuklal Mehta versus High Court of Gujarat. that promotion cannot be claimed as a fundamental right for government servants. It, although it doesn't have an impact, like it doesn't have a direct impact on the privately employed individuals, but yes, lately, I think that this is going to have a far-arcing impact on the individuals who are working privately. If government servants are not given promotion as a matter of fundamental right, so the right to promotion for the private employees is again could be considered as a far-fetched dream. Also, if you are involved in a strike, you can claim your wages, but for that you have to prove that your strike is both legal and justified in a proper manner. Like both ways you have to prove, and that could be possible in a separate case. This was held in the Syndicate Bank versus Umesh Nayak. And also, see, there are 2 points which I wish to make for this Imtiaz Ahmad Mala versus State of Jammu Kashmir 2023 case. Again, all these cases are by the Supreme Court. See, even if you are acquitted in a criminal case, it does not ipso facto or automatically entitle you to reinstatement in your service. So, criminal case could be any. So, this thing has needs reconsideration because uh, in today's world we see many false cases or such, like uh, it is possible that many of us or individuals, they may not be directly involved but indirectly, if their name just simply appears in a FIR or some remote thing. So even if you are acquitted in a criminal case, it is does not entitle you to claim reinstatement in service. And also, yes, also there is another concept called honorable acquittal. So court is yet to pass a judgment on this in relation to honorable acquittal. Another important landmark that I wish to share here with all of us is the Commissioner of Income Tax versus Texas Instruments India Private Limited. This is 2021 verdict of, and it is also traceable in ITRs. It says that definition of workman is very broad under Industrial Disputes Act, and this individual was able to get the benefit of definition of workman and its applicability on the software developers. So the I quote the verbatim, the court in this case has held that the definition of workman is very broad, and said definition would cover any person who has the technical knowledge, self-skilled in the industry. So skilled worker is considered as a workman, and all the rights to claim the benefit, they are available to him. Therefore, the software engineer would per se come within the purview and ambit of workman under Section 2S of the IDA, as long as the person does not take a supervisory role. I have been talking about supervisory role. As long as you have a supervisory role and draw the wages up to the limit which is mentioned in the Code on Wages and the Industrial Relations Code, then you will not be considered as a workman. And also, if you are working in a managerial and administrative capacity, you will not be considered as a worker or workman, IDA or IRC. So with this, I thank you all. And there is another part of discussion which we can have on layoff, the mass layoffs, and the applicability of Industrial Relations Code on layoffs. So if you want, I can discuss that part also. But as far as the aerial view or the prismatic view, you may call, of the Industrial Relations Code, that is all from my side. Thank you so much. If there are any observations or any point which you want me to elaborate again, I am open for the discussion.
Ma'am, there is no such observation.
Mm.
Um,
So that should be all.
okay. Ma'am, you just told that there is a few things that added, like giga worker and in that labor employee. Ma'am, can you just explain कि what kind of, just like Ola, Uber drivers जो रहते हैं, वो भी उसमें consider होंगे?
Ma'am, that is considered, see, Industrial Disputes Act and Industrial Relations Code, it is contingent on the term of employer-employee relationship. However, if you carefully note, Zomato, Ola, Uber, they are not using the term employer. They are using the term partners, our delivery partner, your ride partner. So they
Yes.
invoke a different business model which is relating to partnership, right?
Yes.
On every that is called the platform work. That is called that sorry, the gig work. They are given a
Okay.
role, and one individual can be involved with many employers. So this is the main thing which is to be seen. And these gig workers, they are given security under the unorganized sector, because their employer employee relationship is contingent to switching on of their app.
Okay.
So this part has, because the term, this is not the business model of employer employee, this is the business model of partnership. That is why you might have noticed that the term they use is our delivery partner, or your
Yes.
ride partner. So that they share according to that 60/30 40/70. So they share according to that.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes.
Okay. Um, okay, there is no such observation apart from this.
Okay.
Mm, thank you. Thank you so much, ma'am, for
Thank
contributing
you.
your efforts. Thank you. Thank
Thank
you
you.
all the participant to actively participate in this.
Okay.
Okay.
So I
Yeah.
may leave now.
Mayank sir, are you there? Ma'am, you can share this PPT now to all the
Yes, I will.
participants.
Yes, I will share. I will share. Absolutely no problem. I will share.
Okay.
Thank you so
Okay,
much
ma'am.
for this opportunity. And I'm thankful to ICI for giving me this opportunity. Should you have any doubts or any observations or a separate session on layoff, the mass layoffs, the corporate layoffs, we can have a discussion on that also. So any observation is there, then I'm more than happy to address that. Otherwise,
Yes,
I'm
ma'am.
signing off. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, sir. Yeah.